Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to talk about the Lille Regional Qualifier. This was a very exciting tournament. There's a lot to say and there's a lot to unpack, so I'm gonna move right into it. This video is sponsored by Card Market, the biggest marketplace in Europe to buy and sell Star Wars Unlimited cards. Moving on, so first of all, the basic. It's a tournament that happens in Lille, which is the very north of France. Which is a very central position for Europe, so it was a great place to organize a tournament, except it for people like me who live in Ireland. It was very difficult to get there for me, but for everybody else it was easy. You can actually go there by train if you were from the UK. You could actually go there relatively accessibly if you're from Central Europe. It was the first regional qualifier ever organized, and it hosted a grand total of 160 players, which is ridiculous. You guys need to understand how big this number is. When people ask me, how many people do I expect coming to the regional qualifier, I was like, yeah, well, regional qualifiers in terms of prize pool are not so different from the sector qualifiers. The prize pool is only like slightly better. So I was not expecting to see that many more players attending sector qualifiers, regional qualifier compared to sector qualifiers. And since we were around the 550-ish kind of amount, I was expecting something along the line of 650. I was expecting about 100 more players then, but we didn't have 100 more players. We had around 300 more players compared to our sector qualifiers, which is ridiculous. This is insane. I never thought Star Wars Limited could have such live events. Not only did Lille broke the record of the biggest tournament ever in Star Wars Limited, he broke it by a long shot, because the biggest tournament ever organized was obviously Richmond, that happened with 550 players, I think, something like that. The fact that this tournament was able to get 300 more players is insane. And so I think this can be related to several things. First of all, of course, first regional qualifiers, obviously, very in a position that is very highly densely populated, and also I think one of the big factors is that the meta is so good right now. There's so many different decks you can play, and this obviously makes more people wanting to attend. So this is really great news for the game. We might be leaving the prime of Star Wars Unlimited. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully there's many other large tournaments and it keep growing and keep getting better. But nevertheless, it is a great news for the game, and it was an insanely big tournament. Moving on to the performance of Team Enigma, which is obviously my team, if you didn't know. We had 4 players attending the sector qualifiers: Beton, Sip, T85, and I Am So Humble. We got Beton, who finished top 60. This may not sound impressive, like top 60. Okay, well, top 60 is not that big of a deal, right? But top 60, first of all, means that you made to day 2. And this was a 9-round tournament. To make to day 2, you need to be 7-2. Already by itself, doing 7-2 in such a highly competitive environment where some of the best players in Europe are attending, it's already like a massive performance. Ended up 7-4. Day 2 did not go very well for Beton. But he ends up top 60 once again. Ridiculously good performance. If you top 60, that means there's 800 players under you in the ranking. I don't know if you guys realize how big of an achievement that is. And it's not over. We have then Sip, which was the only undefeated player in day 1 with 10-0. Unfortunately, he lost his last 3 rounds, missing the top 8 by a hair, finishing up at top 10. Ridiculously good performance for Sip as well from our team, from Team Enigma. And then we got T85. T85 ended up not being the only members of Enigma to not make it to the top the top cut, but he still had a very reasonable record at 6-2-1, which means that once again he missed day 2 by a hair. He was really close from getting to day 2 here. 6-1, so basically you turn the draw into a win, and that's it. He was in day 2, and he ended up doing top 76, so he was very close to the top 64. Ridiculously good performance. Once again, there's more than 700 players under him in the ranking, so nothing to be ashamed of. He was playing Bosque Blue, and he had a lot of very tough matchups. He had a lot of very bad matchups, and that made it that made it very difficult for him to perform, but he did still perform very well. And then of course, last but not least, the latest addition to the Enigma team was I Am So Humble, and it ended up with a gargantuan performance here, top 4. Top 4, that means he made it to the day 2, he made it to top 8, and he lost he won in the quarterfinal, and he ended up losing in the semifinal. Ridiculously good performance. He was playing Quinlan Red. We're going to see his list momentarily. Of course, we are so fortunate to be in the team where even in the biggest tournaments that we're seeing, well, we are constantly performing. We're constantly putting some people in the top 8. Once again, only 4 players made it to the tournament, so having 3 of them making to day 2, 1 being so close to day 2 and being within the top, within range of top 64, and having 1 person in top 8 is ridiculously good performance for the team, so super proud for the boys. So moving on now to our next, this is basically the full metagame breakdown. As you can see, there is enough. Sabine was the most represented at 16%, so while the most represented deck Sabine was also the most represented deck in Richmond, but only at 10%. This one is 16%, so we are a little bit over 10%. There's enough people. The tournament is so big. There's enough people in the in only the most performing deck to basically populate a very large PQ, which is so interesting. So Sabine was the most represented deck, but as you can see, it's a very healthy meta. There's once again 60% for most represented deck is not crazy at all. Then we got Quinlan, which is to be expected, and then Kira after how well Kira did in the sector qualifiers back in the US. It's not a surprise to see Kira being very popular. Cat Bane, which I always consider to be one of the best deck against aggro, seeing quite a bit of play. Then Han Solo, which is also a very solid deck, Anakin Skywalker, and this time around, Bosk seeing significantly more play in this tournament compared to what we had in the US, which is something that is to be expected. Boba Fett still sees way too much play compared to how good the deck is. Somehow people just love this deck. It is, in my opinion, the most overplayed deck in Star Wars Limited, and still going out around the 4%. Then we get Palpatine, which also saw a bit of play. Palpatine is a great counter to Kira, in my opinion. Then we still have the people playing Vader to get the showcase, and then we got Piet, which is losing popularity. Obviously, people are realizing the deck is just not performing. People playing some Han Solo worth the risk and having some really great result with it. We get into it. Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think, also a great deck against Quinlan specifically. Songar Saxon has lost a lot of share percentage here compared to what we saw in the US, and then a wide variety of different decks. Another things I would like to note is that we have a much bigger percentage of people playing Captain Rex. This deck was not played at all I think it had like maybe 1 or 2 people playing it. It saw a lot more play in Lille, and not only that, there's one Captain Rex who managed to this is the special combo decks Unity of Purpose, who actually managed to make it to top 64, which is an insane performance because it is a strong deck. I said it, I put it in tier 3 into my meta breakdown. I think it's a deck that has a lot of strong matchups. It's also a deck that has a lot of bad matchups. So it is really incredible that he managed to make it today too. Moving on to the conversion rate. So as you can see, the deck that had the best conversion rate was Sabine. So Sabine is not only the most represented deck, it's also the highest performing deck, converting from 60% to the meta to 26% among the top 64. So great performance here for Sabine. Other than that, we get Anakin having a really great conversion rate, and Kira also did well, and we also see Han Solo Audacious Smuggler doing quite well. It's basically this one, the sample size is very small. Han Solo Audacious Smuggler. So those decks basically confirm their status as being the really good decks. One surprise though is Quinlan. So where is Quinlan here? Yeah, Quinlan. Pretty much not really converting super well. You expect a top deck to be represented over, because generally speaking the best players have a tendency to run the best decks, which has a tendency, so you're gonna see a positive conversion rates from the best deck in the meta most of the time. So this is not surprising. What we're seeing from Kira, from Anakin, and from Han Solo is not surprising. Sabine is has definitely overperformed quite a bit. And among the deck that did underperform, we saw Cad Bane massively underperforming. I don't sure exactly what it is about. We have to take a deeper look, because obviously when you see Sabine doing so well, you would expect Cad Bane to do better. So it's a bit maybe the Sabine players have managed to solve the matchup and made the Cad Bane matchup a lot better. We also saw Palpatine converting relatively well. Another deck that underperformed is Bosk. So I know you guys, I've been caught many times saying that Bosk is a very underplayed deck and a very strong deck in the meta. And it turns out Bosk has massively underperformed here in this event. I mean, massively, it's a big word, it's not a huge sample size, but it did underperform quite a bit. And I have an explanation for this, and I'll get to that explanation as we get into the kind of control decks who actually did well in the tournament, and I'll explain why that's the case. It's a very interesting reason that you might not think about, and it is a direct consequence to the new rules about the draw. The new draw rule is having some serious negative consequence toward a specific kind of control decks in benefit to others, and we'll talk about it later on. Although I just wanted to say that we're not even seeing on the graph here Boba, because not a single Boba players managed to convert. So we went from 41 people who played Boba in the tournaments to 0 Boba in top 64. So once again, Boba is continuing to underperform. And this is the breakdown that we have here. So that you can take a look at it. Pretty much what we already talked about. In terms of bases, this is the bases that's the base breakdown that we had in day 2, and as you can see, ECL very popular, mostly because of Sabine, obviously, and Data Vault, once again being the second most represented base, which is really impressive. Data Vault was definitely the biggest coming out of Richmond, and he has confirmed its status of being the big a base that almost every single green deck that doesn't run ECL is going to be playing now moving forward. There's only a few decks that basically don't run Data Vault because they need to draw a specific set of cards, but Data Vault needs to be something that is going to be here to stay. So moving on now to our top 8. So this is our top 8. We got 3 Sabines, 2 Anakin Skywalker, 1 Quinlan, 1 Rey, and 1 Kira. So the Sabine definitely did very well in all the way up to the top 8. But for me, the big surprise is to see 2 Anakin in top 8. Anakin is a great deck, but seeing 2 of them in top 8 is definitely very impressive. So really cool to see that. I think it's a really Anakin. I've talked a lot about this deck, Anakin Blue. I think Anakin Blue is better now than it ever been, and I actually advised some of the players in Enigma to give a shot to Anakin because I think it was a very strong deck, and it confirmed here in the event. Let's talk about the honorable mentions, because in Richmond it was very interesting because the top 8 was relatively diverse, but then whenever you look at the top 64, it is kind of always more the same. While in this tournament it was a lot wide, there were a lot more diversity in the different decks that you were going to see in top 64, and there's a lot of very cool decks to talk about in top 64 as opposed to Richmond. So we're going to get into it, starting off with this is the list that SIP was running, as well as Beton. That's basically the team Enigma was running, not all of them, but yeah, SIP and Beton were running. So I thought I was going to start with this because obviously this is a list of SIP women top 10, and is obviously by there were only 3 Han that made it to top 64. One of them was Yellow, and then the 2 Han to ECL who made it to top 8 were SIP and Beton. So it was indeed players who did. So the reason why they chose that deck is because the deck was very powerful. It didn't have many bad matchups. I mean, even the Quinlan matchup was not as bad as you thought. They did a lot of changes to the deck to improve the matchup. And it also had, so it was kind of like a Sabine, but a Sabine that was kind of under the radar, that did better against certain type of decks, and that was sometimes a little bit more difficult to deal with because it's a much more wider. If you had to make the comparison here compared to a regular Sabine is more of a burn deck trying to win by using direct damage, using 4 cards I believe in and a Sabine ping. This deck does not even run 4 cards I believe in. It was a purely zoo deck trying to swarm the balls with a lot of units and try to overwhelm the opponent that way. So this was a very different deck from what you see, and it requires different answers. And I think that in the meta, it was really a great choice. And obviously Team Enigma did some great performances with this deck, and it was really doing very well in testing. So this is deck, I'm not going to get into a lot of details because the Soup Racers are obviously going to be releasing a video, and they're going to, of course, they are way more insightful than I could possibly be because they're the one running the deck. But as you can see here, this is pretty much what you would expect as far as Han Green swarming the board using Zan's ability, really try to overwhelm and go wide, which is something that Sip has been loving to do. Even if you remember, his Django list was full of 1-drops, trying to get the double 1-drop opening. There's a lot of great adjustment to the deck they've made in order to improve the matchup. The Sabine Masterpiece, of course, to ambush into the 3-4 flyers. The new addition from the set 4 was Poe Dameron, which is basically comes out as a 4/5 for 3 without downside. So it's basically, imagine an 80 Oller that doesn't have a downside, and you can run this every single time. So Poe Dameron is just an amazing addition to the deck. And then you got a bunch of, you got Eric Renegade, which is a 1/4 for 1, which is ridiculous. Blue Leader is also an insane addition to this deck. It's such a flexible card. It can be sort of like, it can be like a Sound Rider in space, or it can be like a 5/4 on the ground for 4. Like it's such a flexible card. It can be like a Syndicate Lackey that costs 1 less. It can be just anything you want. It's such a flexible card. So the adjustment of the deck that I think are very clever. We got 3 copies of Scanning Officers in the main deck, which is amazing because it solves the 2 worst matchup for the deck, which were Han Green and Quinlan were the 2 worst matchup for Han to ECL, and Scanning Officers really tremendously helped in those matchups where people play a heavy amount of smuggle. If you're able to play this card even for 1 resource and completely tap down this resource and basically just tap down 1, you can completely put you can force the Han to ECL to not play for 1 turn and completely make them miss their turn, and that would end up into a win most of the time. And the thing is, like, people don't expect to see Scanning Officers when they're running against Antu NCL. Actually, Antu NCL has the quality of running different cards that people don't expect, like Hyla Sakura, the Patrol Wings, even like Guerrilla Attack Pod, and this is the kind of card that are so powerful when the opponent does not expect them. So this is like such a great card. We also have some sweet sideboard tech, like for example those Suicide, which are very good against Kira, and those kind of like super heavy control decks. And obviously still running the Disabling Frag Fighters to remove the upgrades, the Shamsin against the ramp. Such a good deck, and heavily underplayed in my opinion. And that's the reason why Sip and Beton did so well with this deck. So moving on now to, we got the Grand Army Thrall Data Vault deck that managed to make it so, okay, I need to double check not only the players but also the, this deck was played by Twilgrim, which is a known player, something I knew about since the UK Game Expo. He's a very good player, so it's not a surprise to see him doing so well. And with this deck, he managed to make it to, hold on, let me double check that. He's thrown deck. Yeah, he managed to do top 23 with this deck. So that's a very big performance for him. And this is what you would expect here from a Admiral Thrawn. He's playing the Director Chronic. He's running all those cards who have double triggers on when defeated. So he has loads of great one defeated effect. The only thing that is interesting about this deck is that he doesn't have that many ways to kill his own units. He doesn't run any exploit card. He's not running the Merciless Contest, so he doesn't have many ways to kill his own units. He's basically only relying on attacking enemy units to actually trigger the when defeated effect. So it has this sort of like kind of relying on really be able to kill his units to be able to actually make them perform. But it has like a strong value engine here with the Lana Shuttle that draws you 2 cards when it dies. The Cop Veins, obviously Cop Veins is a must include if you're running Thrawn, and gonna search all those 2 drops and completely flood the ball. So many ways to draw cards. and you got those removal, the traders, the no glory only result, which is insane with Admiral Thrawn, and you got its 3 extra HP coming from Data Vault. Data Vault is non-intuitive in Admiral Thrawn because it reduces your chance to find a Director Chronic, but this allows you to get extra HP against aggro, because the problem with Thrawn Blue is like it's very weak to aggro, so having this extra HP is really beneficial. And yeah, this is a very sweet deck. I think this is one of the deck I'm the most excited about to try, because I've been looking for a good Thrawn Admiral deck. I unfortunately did not have the chance to really dig very deep into the archetype to really try to find the best list, but looks like Twilgrim did it for me, and I'm really thankful. It's going to be really awesome to try this deck. Next we got an Aiden Versio yellow. This is basically something I want to say about the story of this tournament. This deck did top 17, and it was piloted by Segia22, and he had a record of 10-3. So he did actually not draw a single time with this deck, which is a very impressive performance. So what can we say about this deck? Well, I've been saying this for a very long time, but basically hard control yellow base deck art control decks are some of the best decks in the mirror match. So basically what is very interesting about this is that generally speaking, I'm not talking specifically about this deck because this deck in particular did not draw, but there were other Thrawn decks that managed to draw, and which we'll talk about later. And basically once you manage to draw, you enter in what we call the draw meta, and what happens is that you're going to be paired against all the players that have drawn, because you have now 1 point extra because of the new way the draw rules is that you get 1 point, which means that now you're going to be paired against, because of the point system, you're going to be paired in the Swiss against all the other players in the tournament that have also drawn. And that means that you're going to be entering into a weird meta where there's no Sabine, because no Sabines ever draw, and you're going to be and your chances of encountering hard control decks becomes so much higher. And basically once you're in the draw meta, you're either going to be encountering other hard control decks, or you're going to be encountering mid-range decks. And obviously whenever you're running hard control yellow, you're basically, if I had to make a very simple comparison between the yellow-based hard control decks and the red-based hard control deck like Bosk, yellow does much worse against aggro. Like, it doesn't have the same package of removal. It doesn't. It just doesn't do as well against aggro. It doesn't have the Bosk double heal coming from the bounties. It doesn't have the same ability to get out against control. One of the great quality of Bosk as a control deck is like it's a control deck that actually does really well against Sabine. That's not the case of the yellow base. But once again, if you manage to get a draw early, and you're never going to be paired against Sabine ever again, so you don't really care. So it is something that is very cool about yellow based control decks, is that you just get your draw, and then you get paired into this weird meta, and all you do is encounter mid-range deck and control decks. And the great quality of hard control yellow decks over the boss decks is that they have a great mirror match. And they have great mirror match because on top of the vigilances, they have access to bounty onto crew without aspect penalty, and they've got access to Bazine. And I can tell you that much, is that if you're playing against Bosk, there's no way you lose. It's an unlosable matchup, because you effectively have 6 copies of vigilance in your deck, and you have ways to discard the opponent vigilance, and there's just nothing the boss can do about it. So it is just a unwinnable matchup for them. So with all that being said, let's talk about this specific version. Once again, this might not be the best list to talk about this particular, because this player in particular did not actually draw, which is interesting. But anyway, let's talk about this deck. So this is obviously, he runs the bounty position, which is great. It's a flexible, it basically gives you extra copies of bounties, allow you to get either enticing rewards and top targets. So enticing reward, in my opinion, is one of the best bounty for a control deck. It's basically a better version of Deathmark. Obviously, you don't have the advantage of going for double trigger with Bosk, unfortunately, but it is still an extremely good card. Then you got, of course, a bunch of removals with Frozen Carbonite, a great addition, even though it is kind of a non-bow with Merciless Contest and Power Dark Side. But then the idea is that you play your sacrifice effect first, and then you run those after. You get a bounty onto crew to get back your important cards. The top end is where things get a little bit less good than red. Red really has a better top end between Palpatine and Crate Dragon. Here you have to go for Snoke. which in my opinion is not very well positioned in the current meta. It used to be a great card against Django, but now that Django is out, there's not really that many decks that really are afraid of Snoke anymore. But once again, since you're playing blue, you don't really have that many options. So this is a very interesting decks. To be honest, there's a lot of different leaders that work well with yellow. You can run the new Thrawn with a yellow deck. You can run Iden to get like a double trigger on P38, double trigger on the Seer 90s and all that stuff, which are really great for healing. You can run Iden for a possibility to heal and passive. You can play Thrawn 1. There's lots of different leaders that you can play. You can even play Cat Bane, but then it turns into more of a mid-range deck. But yeah, there's a wide variety of different leaders you can play in that color combination. But fundamentally, the deck is basically a hard control deck that has an auto win against other hard control. And whenever you're going into the draw bracket, that's just an insane advantage that you get. So moving on now to our next list is the Grand Admiral Thrawn Colossus that I was talking about, which is basically an even more extreme version of the Iden deck. The idea is the same. Once again, you're running a hard control deck that auto wins against hard control, basically. And in this case, it's a perfect example for this. It was run by a French player called Ko. I've talked about this player before. He's mapping one of the best. He's one of the best hard control player in Europe. And this time around, he brought a very, very greedy Admiral Thrawn deck, where the plan is all about kind of tempo things out at the beginning, tapping things down with Thrawn, staying alive, trying to stay as healthy as possible, and then reach the later of the game where he's just going to swipe the board with Super Laser Blast or Nebula Ignitions, get this back with Bounty Hunter Crew, and just keep at it again and again. So one of the advantages of this deck here is that usually hard control are very bad 7-drops, but here with Cat Bane you get yourself a great 7-drop that once again is perfect to tempo things out until you get to the point where you can play Super Laser Blast or Nebula Ignition. And then you just basically this deck almost always win with the Vigilance discard package. He's not even running Avenger, like he doesn't care about killing you, he just wants to control you. It's the ultimate control deck that will draw a lot of games. But once again, so this is a deck that is extremely weak to aggro, and actually the couple of losses that he got are from aggro decks. But then once he managed to draw once, he put himself in the draw bracket. And once he gets in the draw bracket, he doesn't have to worry against aggro anymore. This is exactly what happened. Basically, I'm going to share my screen here, guys. I'm going to share my screen because this is very interesting. So you see here, he's going Sabine. He lost against 2 of them and won against actually he won against 2 Sabine, but obviously early in the round you're playing against relatively mediocre players, so you can win even the bad matchup. But then he gets himself a draw, and look at this. Luke, Bosk, Cat Bane, Han Solo, Palpatine. Only matchup that are extremely late game focused. And all those matchups are free wins for a deck like this. So this is like a strategy you can adopt if you're running into a very large tournament like this. Get yourself a draw, get yourself in the draw bracket, and just keep winning against those decks that are not prepared to fight against such a greedy ass deck. And you don't have to worry about aggro anymore, because you're not playing against aggro, because those are not in the draw bracket. So it's a bold strategy, but it's a strategy that it's a strategy that he already told me about during he already told me about that strategy during Liverpool. It's something that he realized in Liverpool, and he's used it here, and he managed to do a top 25 performance with this Grand Admiral Thrawn deck. This is by far the best performance these leaders have ever done, and is a very innovative approach to the game. It's a really, really cool deck. Yeah, it's a really, really cool deck. So now moving on to another deck that did a very impressive performance, and this is a Kazuda red deck. And this deck is the good old Kazuda aggressive deck that we saw, that combines Heroic Sacrifice, Trench Run, puts a bunch of space units in play, very all-in, that really tries to attack you with those, try to use Kazuda's ability to get yourself massive damage into the base. A very, very strong deck that is very aggressive. And this player managed to do, what's his performance again? He did top 9. He managed to get a draw, which is crazy. Maybe that was an intentional draw, I don't know. But like, he was so close to get into top 8, and this would have been, and it is by far the biggest performance from Kazuda ever. It is the proof that Kazuda is a competitive deck, and it is a very, very aggressive in your face, go into space, and get those massive buff spells. So if you didn't know, with Kazuda, you can turn off the downside of Heroic Sacrifice. You can get +2 attack, and draw a card without having to sacrifice the unit. And with Trench Run, you can get +4 attack if you're attacking with a fighter, and you don't have to suffer the on-attack effect, so you have no chance of losing your unit. So there's a combo here between Trench, Heroic Sacrifice, and Kazuda, a very, very aggressive archetypes. I think it's a really, really cool deck. I prefer the yellow version because I think it's more fun to play, but it is very possible that this version is just better. And obviously with Thermal and Oscillator, you get yourself an extreme consistency. You're almost always guaranteed to eat your best cards and to eat your buff spells. A very, very consistent deck, which as opposed to many of the other decks that we've seen. So it's a really, really cool deck, and glad to see this deck doing a major performance in the tournament. Now we're ready with our honorable mention. We're getting into our top 8. And it's going to be a little bit faster because most of the decks you already know them. So we're going to start here with the Kira Data Vault. This is a list from Undefined. Sorry, we don't have the name of that person who are running this deck. And it is basically what you would expect from the Kira Data Vault deck. Very close to what people were playing in the Richmond. A bit more of a spread, a bit more different variety of different cards. We got a Lompike going there. I love Lompike in Kira because I think it's really helpful against Quinlan, for example. But the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would say. A random copy of Confiscate, I guess, for the element of surprise. There's not much to say. It's pretty much the list that we've seen in Richmond. There's maybe 5 or 6 different cards, but shuffled around. But that's about it. Then we got a Sabine ECL. This list is from Cyril, and he was running, so his deck is pretty classic overall. He's running the General's Blade instead of running the Darksaber, which I think there's advocate for both. I think they're both good choices. General's Blade deals 1 less attack, and it curves less well into Sabine. You could get into Sabine, then put the Sabers. Because it doesn't utilize all of your resource, but this has advantages. This means you get one less attack, but you have the opportunity to play a 1-drop going alongside your Sabine. You could, for example, go for R2 to play around Power of Darkside, and then you can play General's Blade after that, which is very, very good against control. And you can play this, means you can play it earlier in the game. You can possibly go Battlefield Marine and then maybe put the General Blades on Battlefield Marine attack. So it gives you that flexibility that Darksaber does not have that flexibility. But even though Darksaber has the advantage of the +1 attack bonus as well as the +1/+1, it's definitely a budget option. General's Blade is definitely cheaper, and it's not a worse card. It's just different. It has some advantages and inconvenience. The rest of the deck is, I'm surprised to only see 2 copies of Sabine Masterpiece in the main deck. It's such an important card against the Han Solo and the Quinlan when you run all those 3/4s in space. But he's making this up in the sideboard here by putting a 3rd copy of Sabine, and he's also running 3 copies of Escort Fighter. This card is pretty much just the same. He has the same role as the Sabine Masterpiece, as killing those 3/4s to prevent a pilot from being put on it and being erased. But he does it without having to use ECA, which is great. It's obviously less of a threat if it survives, but it's still a very good card to have for consistency sake. This is a really cool deck. Yeah, it's relatively classic though. Then we got the Ray Data Vault of Ylsera. So Ylsera again managed to top 8 into a major tournament. This player is ridiculous. It is. In my opinion, I think this performance here in League confirms the fact that he's the best player, not in the UK, but in Europe, in my opinion. I think he's the best player in Europe. Being able to top 8s in tournaments like this with that type of consistency is just completely unheard of. I've never seen this anywhere else in Star Wars Limited. Like, his ability to consistently win is ridiculous. He's running a 62 card deck, obviously. He didn't want it to run 60 cards. I don't know if he did it for the meme or if he does it because he really thinks that's the right choice. His deck is wild. So generally speaking, so now that I've said what I think about him, I think he's insanely impressive. I think that his ability to perform in tournaments, always playing off meta decks, is just completely ridiculous. And most of the time, I love his deck. Every time I see his deck, I really love and I really dig his deck. But this time around, I'm going to be a little bit more critical. I'm not uh, super impressed by this list. I think that it's a classic kind of textbook. Like it's if you're gonna be running a Ray green deck, it's the sort of card that you would expect. There's a couple of interesting things that are going on. The Spark of Hope, I think, is very interesting because you run Alliance Dispatcher. Alliance Dispatcher usually gets killed right away. You can take advantage of this by playing Spark of Hope. You can also do the same with Clone Deserter is really great in combination with Ray's ability. So those cards are all cards that you would expect in a Ray deck. What would be a Ysera deck without a card that makes you draw a card? Mon Mothma is here for that, and he plays a lot of Rebels, so it's really consistent. But there's nothing really special about this deck. It's like a kind of regular middle-of-the-road, mid-range deck. I don't see this winning against Control. Like, I have no idea how he's supposed to win against Control with this. I think this Control is pretty much an auto-lose matchup. He does have to restock in the sideboard to not be milled out, but, like, the Control deck could simply kind of, like, wait for you to get a 6 and just mill you the, like, 6 card after you restock. But once again, if your opponent does not expect you to run restock, maybe you can take people by surprise. And that probably was the strategy for Ysera, was basically saying, okay, our Control is probably an auto lose, so I'm just gonna run those 2 restock, and I'm gonna be like, okay, let's play the game. And if you don't know, I'm running restock, you might just not mill me until the end, and then just restock, and then. But even then, yeah, I don't know if this actually worked for him, but anyway. Deck is probably pretty good against aggro. He has loads of heal, he has loads of ambush unit, he has some Village Protector, was one of the best Sentinel in the game, especially combined with Ray. He got some Entrench. That's probably to stabilize the space arena, because as you can see, it's mostly focused on the ground. So probably the Entrench is for the stabilizing the space. So yeah, there's nothing relatively impressive, but he's just that good of a player. Like, I'm not super impressed by this deck at all. It's not the deck this doesn't look like the deck that's gonna flip the meta around, just unlike some of the previous deck that we've seen from him. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm happy to be wrong, but yeah, I'm not super impressed. But once again, ridiculously good performance, and congratulations to him. Obviously, I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm trying to say, but I'm just not super impressed by the list. Moving on, we got an Anakin Skywalker running the Crystal City instead of the Colossus. So why would you want to run the 30 HP base with Colossus? Oh, sorry, with Anakin, when so many people have established that Colossus was great with Anakin? Well, the reason is because Colossus has 2 major inconveniences. First of all, it's a real big problem against Quinlan, which obviously sees a heavy amount of play still in the meta. The second reason is because only starting the game with 5 cards does hurt your consistency. So those 2 reasons makes it so, yeah, 35 HP base is great against aggro, and 5 extra HP is a great combination with Anakin's ability, but it's not an auto-inclusion, it's just a different way of playing the deck. And here he decides to go for 30 HP base. He's still running the Stella Guerrera, which is interesting, but he's only running 2 this time around. He has the Sham Syndulla in the main deck, so it's a very kind of anti-control. He's basically running Anakin Skywalker. It's like, I think I'm confident in my ability to beat aggro with this deck, because Anakin Skywalker is a deck that does pretty good against aggro, and I'm just going to shift the list to fight against control a little bit better. And that's why he's running with 6 cards in his opening hand. He's running Stella Guerrera in the main deck and Pillage in the main deck. So to me, this sounds like a list of Anakin that is geared toward fighting control, which is very interesting. He's also running the 3 Regional Governors, 2 Krayt Dragons are in sideboard, and 3rd copies of Pillage, and also running the Sham Syndulla in the main, which is another great card against those soft control decks. So it looks like an Anakin deck that has been built to build Kira, basically. So against Kira, obviously, you would rather play a 30 HP base rather than 35. So it's like, I want to beat Quinlan, I want to beat Kira, so I'm just going to give up the Colossus plan. I'm going to go on 30 HP base. That's going to make me worse against aggro, but I'm feeling okay about this, and I'm just going to try to fight a control. So a meta call that our friend D of Faye did, and it paid off very well because he ended up as top 5. Moving on now to our top 4. Top 4 we have the list of Eroth. He was a very known player that is doing well in tournaments fairly often, and he's running a pretty classic Sabine. He has a couple of interesting choices in his deck, notably running Red 5 in the main deck, which is interesting, something that aggro players have a tendency to kind of do a little bit more, being able to have this 3-4 that is not easy to deal with. And also sometimes when a unit gets killed, which often happens, you get to attack and you get to put big trouble on the opponent. So red 5 is a card that we're seeing more and more into those aggro decks. Then we have all other interesting things. We have only 2 copies of 4 Cause I Believe In. 4 Cause I Believe In is great against control decks and against mid-range. It's not so great against again in the mirror of aggro, and it seems like to me that this list is geared towards fighting the aggro mirror. The red 5 is here to fight the aggro mirror, the 3 copies of Rebel Assault, the Confiscate is also to fight all the Sabine decks. So to me this looks like a list that was trying to beat the mirror match. That was really what the vibe that I'm getting from this specific deck. So it's a really cool deck, and congratulations for him for his top 4 performance. And then of course we got our friends, I am so humble, the Enigma players who manage a fantastic top 4 with a Quinlan Tarkintown deck. His list is relatively classic. He's running Grogu as a 2-drop, as a unit that can really great when you're going to get this on turn 1. A Force Enabler and a unit that doesn't die to ping plus Tarkintown. He has actually 9 cards that doesn't die to ping plus Tarkintown, interestingly enough. He's running all 3 Bamboozle in the main deck to beat all those Sabine and those Han decks. He's also running 2 Dissembling Firefighters, so he really didn't want to lose to those upgrade cards. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. You get into the sideboard, the 3 Pillage in the sideboard, interesting thing that I think no many Quinlan players were playing on. The Sham Syndulla, of course, and that just yeah, it's a really cool deck. It's just a different spin on the classic Quinlan formula. It's not so different from most of the Quinlan decks, but it's always nice to have a couple of things that are unexpected in order to catch people by surprise, and I think the Fang Fighters in the main decks is definitely part of that. Going into now the finalist, it was an Anakin blue deck. Once again, this one was interesting because he's running 30 HP base, and he's running the Outer Rim Outlaws, which is something that we saw from Anakin Blue that did perform in Richmond as well. The 3-3 shielded unit that can basically use Anakin's ability to snipe 3-5s. That is just really powerful against Han, against decks that likes to play 3-5s, which there's lots of. The rest of the deck is pretty classic. We have a Kuel, that I think draws a lot of cards in this deck because there's a lot of blue cards. So Kuel is an excellent 2-drop against those decks that are able to draw draw a lot of cards. It's kind of like the Stella. I think the thought process behind this is that I want a card that draws me a lot of cards, but I can't play Stella Guerra because I'm running 30 HP. So I'm gonna play Kuel, and I think this is really a nice choice. If you can draw enough cards from it. Then we got the 3 Pillage in the main deck. That obviously very strong combination with 4 Throw, once again trying to gear the deck to try to have a chance to beat control. And we have some more anti-control package with the Stella Guerrera and the Krayt Dragon in the sideboard. Interesting to not see the Red Squadrons being played in the main deck. I really like this kind of main deck, but in this case he preferred to play Concord Dawn Interceptor, which is interesting. I'm not a big fan of Concord Dawn Interceptor in the current meta, but that's what he decided to play, and he's running. With the advantage of Concord Interceptor in Anakin is that you can give a +2 attack to kill 2 3s, but I'm not a big fan of it. And then he sees the Fang Fighters in the main deck as well. So it's a cool deck, yeah, it's the Quinlan that we know and love. But once again, he's decided to not play the 35 HP base probably for the same reason as all the other guy. So this deck is from Zikwiz. Sorry, please choose a better name, please. This is outrageous. Anyway, last but not least, we got our champion, and our champion is called Jonas Skold Federkisen, the winner of the biggest Star Wars Unlimited tournament ever made. And you know, as a scholar of the game, as someone who's trying to study the game, I'm trying to give you as much insight as possible to try to understand those lists and try to give you some more insight of those lists. But sometimes you got to give your limits. You gotta admit whenever you have no clue. And I would rather just not say anything rather than say something that is just wrong, because I'm gonna be 100% honest with you guys. I do not understand this list. This list is a complete enigma for me. I'm gonna give you a couple of insights. So first of all, this is a Sabine that plays Data Vault, which is crazy to me because obviously he's still running Wrecker, he's still running Podamron, so he would benefit so much from playing ECL, but he decides to play Data Vault because that's gonna give him an immense hedge if you're playing against aggro. And now he has a 33 HP base, and he's running against 25 HP base. And he has now an 8 HP advantage over his opponent, which is wild. So I can see this being a huge advantage against aggro. Against control, though, it is a strong downside. If you're playing against control, anything from hard control to soft control, and you don't have access to ECL to get rid of a massive sentinels on something, it's really bad for you. So it's a very interesting approach, and obviously there's a lot of other downsides to it. It's like you have to run now a bunch of cards, makes it harder to find the 4 cards. I believe it makes it harder to find the record Podamon. This is not super significant, but really not being able to have ECL is a big deal. So there's this thing. It's gonna be interesting to see if he's still playing Timely Intervention now, and he's played 3 copies of it, but once again, because he's running 60 card, he's not gonna see them so often. There's a couple of interesting, he's playing Frisk. I'm not a big fan of Frisk because he doesn't get rid of the most played pilots, which are Hanso. Yeah, actually, he doesn't get rid of any pilots, he just get rid of shield and experience token most of the time. So yeah, I wonder why Frick was an option that was played. I mean, it's a 2-3 for 2, I guess. And since you're running a 60 card deck and you need to win a lot of 2-drops, you need to have that flexible approach. It's probably just like, okay, I just need more 2-drops, and I'm just gonna run Frisk. But he could have run Jean or so, but maybe just values the ability to put a pilot higher. And then he's running Ketsu Onyo, which is a solid 2-drop. Once again, he's running 2-drop that we don't normally see, simply because he's running 60 card deck and he needs to consistently hit his 2-drops. He gets the Sims of Blue Leaders, the Cassian. He's running all the 3-drops. He's also running the Red 5. So this makes sense. What doesn't make sense is what follows. Okay, see, the Petrol Wings, I like it. Once again, he's running 60 cards, so you gotta go a little bit deeper into the card pool to find the card to fill your deck. And then he runs Senatorial Corvettes. Yeah, Senatorial Corvettes, it is Saboteur, I guess. It's 5-4 Saboteur, you can hit for a lot. But it's very easy to kill at 4 health, and it doesn't have immediate impact on the game. Whenever you playing a Sabine deck and you get to 5 resource, you get into that territory where you want to be able to finish the game off, and that card is just very slow and very easy to deal with, and the discard is kind of mad whenever you're playing aggro. And you don't really care about just discarding opponent's 1 card. Then he plays the Radus, and this is wild because Radus obviously never get Sentinel outside of just having Poe in play. So basically, this is obviously not for the Sentinel he's playing it. My theory on why he's playing the Radus is because Radus is the unit in the game that has the most attack at 7-drop, and since it goes into the curve of 6 to 7, and that's the unit that has the most amount of attack for the price you're paying for it. It also has the 1 defeated effect, but I don't think that's what he cares about. I think what he cares about is having this giant space unit that can deal 8 damage in 1 action and finish the game like that. That's what he's interested in. I think that's my theory on why he's running it. But needless to say, this is definitely something that's really crazy, because keep in mind that Wrecker destroy your own resource. To be able to, and that makes it very difficult to get up to 7 resource whenever you're playing Sabine. Since the Sabine has started playing Wrecker, it started to become very difficult to get to the Radis territory, because to get to 7 cost rate territory. There's all the cards you would consider there. Obviously, U-Wing Reinforcement gives you so much board presence, but it is board presence that is split across multiple units, which could be a downside in some matchup. And obviously, another choice that would be possible for deck classes would be a Mace Window. Mace Window has the advantage of coming in, killing something, then readying and can attack right away. This one, obviously, you have to wait for an entire turn to be able to use it. So, yeah. I'm trying to understand what's going on here. I'm doing my best, guys. The sideboard is even more crazy. You got 3 Great Dragon. I want to know how many times he managed to play Great Dragon in this deck. It is, yes, a more mid-rangey version of Sabine. We can agree with that. But still, 9 resource. Whenever you are killing your own resource with Wrecker, how in hell and heaven does he get to Rad? Does he get to Krayt Dragon? I just don't see it. I mean, he got a couple of ramp with Shamsindula, I guess. I'm guessing he's always siding the two together. This is just so wild. It is by far the craziest deck I've ever seen, and yeah. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. If the person watched this video and want to give more insight about the deck, I would love to. But right now I'm really this is by far the most challenging deck list analysis that and unfortunately I didn't get the chance to watch the top 8, so that didn't help at all. I would have liked to see the deck in action, and the stream is not longer available, so I can't really rewatch the replay, unfortunately, at least not yet. So if you got more insight about what this deck is trying to do, give me a heads up. Obviously it is a Sabine aggro deck that is trying to leverage the extra HP from Data Vault, but yeah, there's a lot of consequence and implication into this that I would like to see in action. Definitely an interesting deck though. Time will tell if it's a one-time thing or if it's something that's going to become standard. If it is, we live in a crazy world. What else can I say? And yeah. So congratulations, of course, for winning the tournament to Jonah. And it's a crazy list. And it's the second win with Sabine in a row. I said that Sabine never managed to make great performances in tournaments before Richmond, and now we have back-to-back Sabine ECL and Sabine. And another Sabine deck making back-to-back win in Richmond. So that's in major tournaments. So that's it's a golden age to play Sabine for sure. Just wanted to let you know that you can pick up Darksaber for 12 euro on Card Market. Sabine is the best deck in the game right now, so Darksaber might be worth picking up since it is played in most Sabine deck. Not all Sabine deck. Actually, this deck does not even run any of those things, which is crazy. Anyway, moving on now to our learnings. What have we learned from this tournament? The first thing I've learned is that Data Vault is here to stay. It was not a one-time thing from Richmond. It's a thing that has been widely adopted, and now we're even seeing aggro decks running Data Vault. It's a thing that is widely adopted. Pretty much, as I said, every single deck that doesn't want to run ECL and doesn't care about drawing a particular card is running Data Vault right now. It turns out, and I said it before and I say it again, that having to run extra cards in your deck is not that big of a downside. And we already knew this because we have Yosera that keeps doing those great performances by always running 1 or 2 more cards than you should. And if you can get some extra HP from doing that, it's obviously very worth doing. Then we got Sabine is confirmed to be the best deck in the meta. We saw this most represented deck in the tournament and the most represented deck represented in top 64 with a progression of almost 10% between the overall tournament and the top 64. Sabine is now, we were kind of thinking, oh, is it Sabine the best deck or is it Quinlan the best deck in the meta? Right now it is clear that Sabine is the best deck in the meta, is the deck to beat, and everybody has to be caring about it, unless you're playing a hard control deck that is planning to draw and never meet a Sabine ever again. That's the strategy that many people try to do. And this is another learning I've had, is that the out control decks that perform the best in those large tournaments are the ones that do well in the draw meta. So my explanation on why Bosk Blue did so poorly in this tournament, as opposed to those yellow-based control decks, is because probably what happened is like those Bosk players were getting into the draw bracket, and they were paired against yellow-based control decks and losing to them. Because obviously Bosk has no chance to win against yellow, but we usually don't care about it as Bosk, because we know those decks are extremely niche and will get swiped away by the Sabine. But if those decks get into the draw bracket, and now we have those matchup, we also have all the crazy control deck, like we saw this Trench green deck, which I would love to make an entire video about, that got himself into the draw bracket, and now suddenly it gets to play against hard control after hard control, and this deck is almost impossible for hard control to win against. You get into those very, very weird meta consideration, and those decks are playing a different game at all. They don't want to play against aggro, they don't care. And this is the reason why Bosk Blue is really hating this situation, because Bosk Blue is a deck that is way more balanced than those greedy control decks. It's a deck that is able to beat aggro. But now but obviously it's still a hard control deck, so sometimes it will draw, and whenever you draw, you have to be stuck into this draw meta where you have to be facing all those hard control decks, where you would much rather be facing a much more balanced meta where there's some Sabine and stuff. So this is my explanation on why Bosk did so poorly. And this might just be the bane of balanced control decks. Maybe that balanced control decks are not going to be a thing anymore because they just don't perform well in this draw bracket. And maybe we're going to be in the stage where now the only thing that is worth playing is those super hard, greedy control decks that just draw and get into this draw bracket and just go all the way to top 64 with that thing. Maybe that's going to be the new reality for playing control decks, which I think is very unfortunate, and it's a very consequence of the new draw system, which I think it could have some very negative impact on the game. Moving on is the last thing I want to say is that this meta remains healthy and all playstyle are very competitive. So it's definitely still a very, very healthy meta. And obviously this remains to be confirmed throughout the PQ season, but it is obviously a great time to play Star Wars Limited at a competitive level. We had some great fun on the Discord, Enigma Discord, which is going to be in the link description below. It turns out the casting was not great. Unfortunately, the casters were not super experienced with the game, so it was very. I did actually took on so our third Saturday to do some casting with notably like George from the Botham Network that joined me doing some casting. It was a very fun time, and I'm hoping to be able to do that again for next event. Probably for the Galactic Championship, I will do some casting as well. Maybe for the next regional qualifier that's going to happen in the US. Yeah, because unfortunately the casting here was really not good. So I think there were a lot of people appreciated for us to cast the games onto our Enigma community Discord, which you can join for free just by going on the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.